Thank you, Linda. Well, let's start a Q&A section. Please introduce yourself. I think we can take 2 questions at a time. Then Linda answers them. Please go ahead.
One question that always raises when we think about the web as a platform is that there are very good stuff out there, but there's also bad stuff out there, and for the common citizen, it's very hard to tell the good from bad. You talked about accreditation of material. Could you go a little bit more? Because it's very easy to have people with different views and things like someone can put a course on biology based on creationism, for instance, in a university, and how can and the web space is enormous, it's huge, and if I Google, I perhaps can fall on bad material or wrongly designed material on a relevant subject and get in the wrong way. I mean, what would be the way to try to organize this mess?
Another question I might just do the book for once. Maria Helena Guimarães de Castro. I am a retired teacher, professor from Unicamp, the same university, and my business now is basic education. I am working with basic education and with public basic education. My question is, how are you training teachers, especially teachers for basic education, secondary level, high school, and primary level, to manage technology and to use this kind of materials?
I think I will actually answer them individually because they're related, but this discrete and very important. To be honest with yours, we're still grappling with this. I'm co-chair of a commission that has the most audacious title, the Global Redesign Agenda for Educational Systems. Now that's a mouthful, and it it includes Secretary General of UNESCO. Oh, I was going to say, this is one of these things that, only academics would think you could possibly do, or government officials. But so we have UNESCO, we have the Fast Track, we have World Bank, we have those who, Cisco, Intel, we have the Queen of Jordan, who's actually done some very good work at basic education, which I'll come to, and we have the World Economic Forum education folks. And we are working on this redesign because your issue is a very, very important one. Our thought is that it will not be perfect, that we haven't decided how you would accredit the organizations, because we don't want to be real elitist, because frankly, a number of the universities that are not rated in the top 200 in the world, right now, Africa only has one institution, I think, rated in the top 200, and there obviously are important institutions in Africa, and they have important faculties doing important work that others of us need to know about. So we don't want to do it simply by ranking. And even those of us who have are highly rated, we have faculty members who can put odd things on the web and do right now. So we're not going to be able to have a filter because we don't want orthodoxy. But we do think that there will be some sort of accrediting feature that probably will be related to institutions. And that they will have to be formal courses. We're not going to get into the blogosphere. It's going to be real faculty at accredited institutions who are doing things that they are doing for their courses. To the extent that they have outlandish things in their course, well, we'll have to have people use some judgment in terms of filtering it. In the same way, we realize that we're not going to have any political orthodoxy, even though we recognize that some of the courses we might teach at Yale would not find favor with those necessarily, just to pick one country, China, for instance, much less some of the Middle East. But that, we think, is we'll have it there. We're not being obviously prescriptive. Faculties and countries can pull down from it what they want. The real thing is making it accessible. So we haven't mastered the accreditation, but you're right to see it as a fundamental issue. And I think what we're going to do is at least start experimenting for the first couple of years. We hope to have this platform up by 2011, because as faculty build new courses, we want them to use this common platform. Because right now, many universities have their own digital asset management system, which is still fine. But if the courses could be built together, then you could search across them. basic education, I have to say that I'm disappointed to report that Yale does not have a school of education. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind that if we were starting a school from scratch, if we were starting right now and said we're going to have 12 schools, that given the importance of education, we would have a school of education. I really have no doubt about that. But, so we at Yale are not helping to contribute directly to the improvement of primary education. But I can report again on what I see in this global redesign. And if you don't know about it's called the Global Education Initiative, GEI. It's been very intensive work in Egypt and in Jordan. And it's been a combination of corporations, local governments, and the federal governments in trying to go in and do teacher training in advance of technology. Because what they had found earlier on is they went in and put in a lot of computers in primary, and they didn't change the teachers' teaching, and it didn't make a difference. So the GEI has some ways of advancing teacher training. I know that there's just been launched here, I think March 1, on the virtual university through the TVs, some new innovations to try and teach teachers in the basic grades, primary grades. I do think that is, certainly in our country, is improving the quality of teaching at the basic education level is critical, and I do think that there could be some combination of these techniques that I mentioned in tertiary education that could be applied at the basic level.
My name is Nina Ranieri. I'm a law teacher and also I work for the government. I'm a deputy secretary of higher education. And I'd like to know, for how long have you been working with distance learning aimed to global education? And what are the difficulties you have faced during this period?
Hi, my name is Marcelo Knobel. I'm also from Unicamp, from Campinas. My question is more technical, let's say, or more practical. We are trying at our university also to face two problems that you mentioned here. We are trying to introduce a general course for general education, and also to introduce new technologies in education. And strangely enough, we are facing a rather strong resistance from our faculty. I believe that they are reluctant to change. Usually people is really reluctant. They don't want to change what they are doing right now. And also, there is a pressure, in the universities, a pressure for publications and low recognition for any teaching assignment and so on. So we are facing some resistance, and I would like to know if you face something similar, and how do you deal with that?
Both very good questions. Let me take yours first, and I'll come back, Minister, yours. Is that, in terms of the faculty, we tried a tactic which has worked. Again, whether it would work on your campuses, I don't know. Which is that the very first teachers we approached to do these online courses were the iconic figures on our campus, the ones that have the greatest standing. And we basically convinced them to do this. And once you get the leaders of a faculty to do something, it becomes easier for others. We also only went to tenured faculty. We didn't go to any non-tenured faculty because we didn't want them to think, oh, maybe this is too new age, they won't think it's important, I won't get tenure. So, and we went to the faculty, this was our appeal. And I do recognize that our situation is fairly precious, that we have small classes, but there are some lecture classes, but the lecture classes are quite small. There might be 40 people or 50 people in a lecture class. Good. So we went to this and we said, Don Kagan, you are the greatest living historian of Greek history. That was not flattering. That happens to be true. You're only having 40 or 50 students a year benefit from your teaching. Yes, thousands can read your book and have it as a textbook in universities. If you do this, you have the opportunity for thousands and thousands of students who will never see you to benefit from you. And actually, we're not asking you to do a whole lot more. I'll come back to a whole lot more. We're not asking you at this juncture to do a whole lot more. And so we got a couple of them, if you will, sort of early adapters. And once we got it rolling, then the others said, well, you know, this is obviously the thing to do. So that's human nature, I think, in terms of group leadership. What I want to share, though, is what we have not done yet. We're likely to do next year. And if we had told the faculty that they had to do a lot more work, that would have been difficult, you know. But we right now, as I said, are putting these up for free. And you can use all these materials for free, and someone's faculty colleague could use them. But we're not giving the people out there in the world, or the students in other places, opportunity to interact in a chat room with our faculty members. Because, you know, they're important scholars. They have other things to do. What we're going to think of doing, experimenting next year, is what we have seen, say, other institutions do in the United States. Berkeley is an example, which is that you could, if you want to get Berkeley, California credit, you could actually take it for credit, and you would have a graduate or a junior faculty member or a graduate student, senior student, be your chat room mentor, and you would have the opportunity for real assignments and real classes with that teacher, and it would not be perhaps the iconic figure, scholar, but it would be a very able person who was at least in the final year of a PhD or a junior faculty member. But this tactic of getting the very leading people and appealing to them because they will make a greater impact in the world work for us. The others, once it got started, I must say, you would just be touched, I think, if you would read the testimonials from some faculty who around the world who write to our faculty, particularly in not big and great universities like you are, but modest little places, sort of up in the mountains, right? You know, saying we could have never given our students a course this sophisticated on game theory, or we could have never had a course on the frontiers of astrophysics without you. And this really is a deep satisfaction, a psychological compensation to our faculty. So that has been a tactic, if you will, but one that has worked very well. In terms of asking the ministers, like, how long have we been at it and what are the difficulties? In terms of internationalization, with three sort of vectors I said of really making it much more intentionally international at Yale, having much more financial aid, having more research collaborations, we've been at that about a decade. And the difficulties that we have encountered, I think, are limited only by our imagination. We do have to find faculty. Well, let's put it this way. For the research, we recognize that it all is driven by the faculty, and that offices like mine can help, if you will, support the faculty, can do the agreements, can figure out how to get more resources for them, figure out whatever the visa problems are. But you have to have a faculty who has an ambition for one of these larger joint centers. But to the extent that most everyone recognizes that the most of scholarly issues, social sciences, even in the humanities, is going to benefit from more sustained collaborations. There is, I think, increasingly an eagerness to have these kinds of centers. But those can only be as good as a faculty member who has sort of a passionate regard for it. So some of you may know from the law is that we feel quite grateful to have been a part of an enterprise that's been going on down here for 17 years, CELA, which brings a group of law professors every year together from a number of universities in the Southern Cone, and includes Yale and some other faculty members. And that now is an important network of scholarly exchange, not just a conference every year, but that research has developed on the side of it.
Hi, my name is Euclides Mesquita. I'm also from the University of Campinas. If I understand correctly, all your efforts are directed towards undergraduate courses. I was particularly interested in graduate courses. I don't know if you did have some experience or extended these efforts toward graduate studies.
That is exactly going to be our next phase. We wanted in the first phase to see if we could replicate the breadth of our first year undergraduate, our first tier undergraduate diploma, particularly since, as I mentioned, a number of those who are our partners in the research enterprise, as in China, as in Singapore, have been eager to experiment with this liberal education at the undergraduate level, but actually don't have that many faculty members who necessarily have been through that kind of an education. So we thought that this could have a multiplier effect even for ourselves to help then. We're now about to turn to some modules in our professional schools, ones in which we think we can get the greatest leverage. So I'll give you an instance. Our first two are likely to be in public health and environmental studies. We have two very important schools, and we think those are subjects where there could be the greatest need, as opposed to some of our other schools. We also think that they're, although we also have an aspect in terms of basic medical education we're thinking of, but public health, in the environmental studies, and in medicine. Let's give you the example of why we think this could be powerful. And again, your institutions are probably doing something very similar. We have programs where senior or deputy ministers of the environment come to Yale for, say, a week. And so you get them from 6 or 7 countries, and they bring a little team of 6 people. So you might have 30 people come to New Haven. They schlep all the way to New Haven. There are only 30 of them. Our faculty give them an intensive, great course for a week. These people go home. They're like you. They're very busy folks. They have a whole ministry that could have benefited from these things. Mightn't it be good, even if we keep some in-person education, to have then a way to have it filtered down through these ministries for the same educational content? So that the program we have here has like a day on sustainable cities, a day on clean air, a day on clean water. You kind of get it. If we could have the same kind of lessons in a box here, we could really penetrate, and they could penetrate their ministries, but also in many cases their state or provincial leadership cadre.
Linda, my turn. I was wondering whether there is any issue, legal issue, that might prove to be an obstacle to that endeavor to go global, if there is one, or more than one. Have you think about it? Have you faced that? You envisaged them? What do you make out of it?
And in fact, that probably would have been the better answer to the difficulties in this. The U.S. intellectual property regime is perhaps the most restrictive in the world. So to be able to even post these courses online in the United States required just laborious effort, so that any illustration, so in other words, if a faculty member has an illustration from a magazine or a 2-minute clip from a video news broadcast, or even a poem that's more than so many lines of the poem, we had to go through and get copyright clearance. So we would have to actually have a paralegal type person. Again, we did not burden the faculty with any of this, but folks who work in the administration would have to go and get copyright clearance, pay $5, pay $10, pay whatever it costs, or go back to the faculty and say, look, and we've done this. We actually train the faculty, say, when you're teaching the poetry, we don't want you to change your teaching style if it hurts the content of what you're trying to, but if you can, say only 3 lines of poetry at a clip, it would really help us. Go on and do more than 3 lines if you need to, but every time you do more than 3 lines, know that we're going to have to clear it. Similarly, we have a number of faculty, perhaps I should be embarrassed to say this, who would have like cartoons and jokes in their lectures to sort of enliven it. So we've said, obviously do that, but don't do it to an extreme, and so we've worked with the faculty for them to know, but that is a problem. But our general counsel, our lawyers have told us that at least so far, if we can make it compliant for the U.S., it's going to be good enough for everybody else to use. We are working, I should say, one of our goals for the next 5 years is to try first in the U.S. Congress is to get a change in the legislation so that if you put these things up for free use, not commercial, but if other educators are going to use them, that there would be a more accordion, broader swath that they would have the concept of fair use, where you don't have to go and go through the laborious exercises. And then we're hoping, if that works, we might go to some of the more international combines to see if there might be an extension of that kind of liberality only for educational purposes.
Well, thank you, but I still have another question, if I may. I don't want to disclose the classified information, so to speak, but how much does it cost to Yale such an effort?
That's a very good question, because if you were to go and shop online, you will see, I hope, by my going through these slides, that we have come up with the platinum version. You know, to do professionally edited transcripts is not an inexpensive exercise. To do professionally filmed lectures is not a cheap exercise. But even having gone through these 30, and one of the units in my portfolio does this, is that we are now, for the next phase, recognizing that actually we can cut corners a lot. So, for instance, you probably know this, that you can have robotic films. I don't want to get our cameraman worried here, but basically you can have robotic films in which they're heat sensors, and they follow now they won't be as high quality, zoom in and zoom out, but they have heat sensors that follow sort of where the human being is. So if the faculty member walks across the stage back and forth, you can just do this and just sort of turn it on, and it sounds like it must be very expensive, but actually the cost of all this equipment is coming down so much, so that we really can get the staff costs there, and that we have found that the production costs do not have to be that much. So once we get this this digital voice recognition, which is getting to be really quite good, that we think the cost can come down a lot. So the average cost now would be about $10,000 a course. We believe the price point can come down.
All right. Well, I think we're done. Thank you so much for this such an interesting presentation.
Thank you
I
so
hope you
much.
can be back here in the near future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your attention on Friday afternoon.